of Famer John Smoltz joins me now. Thanks for calling in, John.
Oh, my pleasure.
Oh, yeah. So before we get to the baseball, I know you're an all-around sports fan. Did you see the football game last night, John?
That was about as crazy of a fourth quarter and as crazy and most unpredictable ending that I think I've seen in a long time.
It's been...
It trumps my Lions last year in the worst call in the history of professional sports.
You're talking about the picked up flag against Dallas?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well,
yeah.
I mean, you know, and I don't want to bring up the lines last week, so do you want to stay on the game last night, or you want to bring up the lines last week, John?
Yeah, I'm still having a hard time letting that go, and certainly Expectation City in Detroit has been one where all I've asked is that I go to a Super Bowl that they play in before I pass. That's it.
Well, you hosted one. I mean, you got that one at least right now for a few years ago. That was a pretty good one, too, between the Seahawks and the Steelers.
Yeah, but it's got to be. I got to be in person. I don't care if they win. It's just they've got to get there. That's it.
I'm just curious. I'm with John Smoltz, Hall of Fame pitcher here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you? I imagine you've even probably played golf with Peyton Manning. What do you think of Peyton Manning right now? Seeing him at age 39, throw it around and have questions about arm strength and things of that nature. I'm sure you see something similar in Major League Baseball with a pitcher ending his career before going into Cooperstown. When you see Peyton, what do you think of John Smoltz?
Well, I think of, the ultimate warrior. I mean, football players have so much to deal with, right? And certainly quarterbacks have that much more to deal with from the physical standpoint to the speed of the game. And, there's times where your age shows, and there are times when you still got it. And I think the fact that in the fourth quarter, if he's trailing and he's got the ball, I'm still taking my chances with him. Yeah, it may not be the prettiest pass in the NFL, but, his ability to still see the game and adapt, because he's had a new head coach and new system, I'm sure. And that's what's so amazing about this guy. He's going to get all kinds of records and probably the most you ever see ever again. But the time he spends preparing is probably unmatched.
Well, you've got the Yankees and the Mets tonight, switching back to baseball right now. And obviously the Mets have a pitcher in Matt Harvey at the beginning of his career with an issue about trying to figure out how do I live in the moment while making sure I have a longer career with the Tommy John surgery, and him coming out and not saying to the New York media, I'm pitching in the postseason, but he did it on the Players Tribune blogging. What's your take on Matt Harvey, John Smoltz?
Well, it's unfortunate. We've seen this play out before with another player in Steven Strasburg, and it didn't go too well. In other words, you got out in front of it. Somebody else was doing the talking for him. It put him in a very difficult situation with his teammates. We saw how it played out with the Washington Nationals. They were adamant, this is how it's going to be, this is what's going to happen, and everybody had a solution that could have altered that and maybe even changed their course for that team. Playoffs don't come around every year, unlike what we were able to come through. And I think, for Harvey, it's a tough situation. There is no doubt, because he had 18 months post-Tommy John, he's been in a better spot, and this showed it this year. And there were opportunities that the Mets tried to have, a six-man rotation, tried to skip them. They had their eye on this innings limit from the very beginning. But then somebody else came out and spoke and put him in a tough situation where he had to deal with something that I feel very sorry that he had to deal with, and it puts him in a tough place. So I think for Matt Harvey, there's no doubt you can't let this guy just pitch unlimited and just act as if it's just the last year of his life. But I think there are ways psychologically and mentally to deal with this differently, and to get the rest that he needs after this start on Sunday, to put him in the best position to pitch in a postseason game, and then watch and let him, be able to do what he can do without the pushing or maxing out of a performance. Now, that's easier said than done. He's never been in this situation. He's never pitched a postseason game before. And this is what I said before the season started. The Mets were not anticipating, if everyone can tell the truth, they were not anticipating this kind of scenario.
Sure.
Now, good for them. They've got an 8-game lead, which takes the pressure off. But could you imagine if it was a 1 or 2-game lead?
Yeah.
The pressure on these young kids, who the modern-day baseball does not prepare them to pitch in the big leagues because of the limits they have on them, there's just no way. It's not fair to them to try and get this team to the spot they want to get. So they're ahead of the curve. They've seized it. They went out and made trades. It's going to be exciting, but the management has a lot of tension on them based on this thing we're just talking about.
John Smoltz joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. How big of a loss is Kong for the Pirates as they try and win a World Series this year, John?
You know, it's pretty huge because the depth takes a hit, of course, but his personality and the way he was playing. This guy stepped in, was really up there in the Rookie of the Year, challenging a lot of, the ability to play every day and switch positions, play shortstop. It's unfortunate. I hated to see it. It was as bad as an injury as it looked like, and at the same time, it wasn't a horrifically bad play. It wasn't go out of your way to try and hurt somebody. The way he received the ball and the way he came towards first base and the slide made it look a lot, worse from Coughlin's standpoint. It's really unfortunate for Pittsburgh, but this will test their team's strength and depth. They always seem to overcome.
And in terms of the American League wild card right now, what is happening to the Astros, John? What's going on with them?
Well, they're a little bit of a byproduct of look, this is a young, exciting team that the future is very, very well in place. But on the road, they've struggled because the way they constructed their team of swing and miss home runs, it's really perfect for their park. And then they're just the byproduct of a young team with very little experience going into this. So they're going to learn a lot from this. I still think they'll be able to rebound and come out of this, but this is a tough road trip. Now they get to come home for 9 days. They've been awfully good at home. Keuchel is experiencing, not only pitching for a Cy Young year, but also trying to pitch his team into the postseason. So I haven't seen too many young teams run through the year and get to the postseason without some veterans, but that's what they're facing. They're learning on the job. They've had of their 12 major contributors on offense, I think only one has been in a postseason scenario, and that's Rasmus, and it was only 3 games. So they got to experience something pretty incredible in Texas, and I think the organization will handle it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, John, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Yankee fan. So, in other words, you've made me nervous many, many times in my life, John. I want no part of a one-game series against Dallas Keuchel with all the Yankees left-handers not really being able to swing for that short porch. That one frightens me down to my socks, John.
Yeah, I think especially if they got a chance to, it doesn't look like they would sneak out the...
I don't know. I mean, you got the Angels who beat the Twins last night. I mean, they might beat each other up over the next 4 days. And then, as you mentioned, Houston gets a little bit of a breath of fresh air when they go home. They might hold on to this wild card spot despite how horribly they've played of late.
Well, here's what the Yankees have going for them.
Okay.
And certainly they still are within reach of the division, so it's not out of possibilities. But here's what they got going for them if it comes down to a one-game playoff. Mm-hmm. They got 4 innings that they're going to get out of Betances and Miller. So that's 5 innings you got to get out of somebody else, and your starter more than likely Tanaka. So the Yankees have built themselves in a situation where to make a deep run, can they continue to pitch like that and use those guys? No. But to win that game and get into a series and give themselves that breathing room, that hiccup that I call, that doesn't happen in a one-game playoff, that's what they've got going for them. They're better suited for that than any other team right now in the American League.
And then they earn a spot against Kansas City. How good is Toronto for the long run? I mean, with Tulowitzki, who might be hurt. And as you know, in the playoffs, pitching usually dominates, and that hitting might not be as stout as we've seen over the last 6 weeks, John.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. No one has really, they're the best team right now going offensively, and no one's really been able to solve that piece of what's it going to look like in the postseason. Tulowitzki, missing piece, really is bigger than most people think. The fact that they have David Price helps. It's must-win on David Price Day, and then anyone else they have, they're going to have to score some runs. They got a sneaky bullpen. I don't know how deep a run they can make, scoring 4 or 5 runs every game. That's where the likes of a Kansas City and their bullpen. That's where the pitching comes in, and I think that's going to be an interesting test. The fact that Toronto hasn't been there in 22 years. This is an exciting time for that city. They're selling out, which is great. And we got some new storylines in baseball. They may not be the sexy markets that everybody likes to see, but it's really good storylines, and it's a right-handed lineup because really they only have a couple lefties. It's a right-handed lineup that mash.
So John Smoltz joining me here. Before I let you go, let's return to football. your Spartans take on Oregon while Ohio State welcomes in Hawaii. I mean, what's up with that? What's up with the schedules here, John? What's going on
you
here?
know, all eyes are on that one game in Ohio.
Yep.
This has been now 3 years running. It's 1-1. I'm a little nervous because Ohio State looks awfully good. It looks like they just get to play with people and then do what they want or push a button.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, college football is headed towards, you know, the Big Ten has been taking its beating the last few years, and Ohio State has saved the conference, and hopefully either them or Michigan State will save them again this year as they try to rebuild the quantity because there's not a lot of quality.
Oh, come on now. Let's not forget about the new coach in Ann Arbor, John. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's good for the conference, and that's good for Michigan State, Michigan, but it's not good for me because I've enjoyed the last 5 years.
I bet you have, John. Hey, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Let's chat as the baseball playoffs go closer, and say hi to Bob for me, will you, please?
You got it.
You got it. It's John Smoltz of MLB Network joining me here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.